I arrived 15 minutes early. The National Civic Awards were being held in one of the grandest halls in the Capitol. Marble pillars, velvet seating, golden lights that made even the air feel expensive. As I stepped inside, I clutched the invitation tightly in my hand. Heart pounding in a rhythm I hadn't felt since childhood. The ushers smiled, but their eyes skimmed over me. I wore a simple dark blue dress, nothing showy, nothing branded. It belonged to my late mother, altered slightly to fit me. It had no designer tag, but it carried memory in every stitch. Rows and rows of chairs faced a central stage where a grand podium stood beneath a national crest. The first 2 rows were marked reserved family and state guests. I moved toward them, scanning the placards. That's when I saw him, Marcus, my stepbrother. He stood at the edge of the front row, greeting old classmates, shaking hands like a local politician. His suit was crisp and navy, his watch large enough to catch every light in the room. He hadn't seen me yet, or maybe he had, and chose not to. I stepped closer. There it was, my father's name on a tag near the end of the row. Not Marcus's biological father, ours. The man who raised us both. My heart fluttered. At least someone had remembered. Maybe I did belong here after all. But just as I moved to sit, Marcus turned. He saw me, and instantly his expression changed. His smile faded, replaced with a polished smirk. He stepped toward me and gently placed a hand on the chair. "You can't sit here," said under his breath. I blinked. "That's Dad's name." He nodded slowly, glancing around as if to make sure no one important heard. "These seats are for family guests. It's kind of sensitive. Optics matter, you know." I felt my throat tighten. "I am family." Marcus leaned in, voice syrupy but sharp. "I'm not saying you're not. I'm saying this isn't your place. There's seating in the middle rows. You'll still see fine." And with that, he turned his back on me and resumed talking to someone in a glittering gold dress. I stood there for a moment. Burning, the shame was immediate and visible. A nearby usher glanced at me sympathetically, but said nothing, so I walked down the aisle, away from the nameplate. Away from the man who once called me sis before our father died. Away from the front row, I sat in the 6th row. Alone, all around me. People were taking selfies, adjusting suits, whispering excitedly about the president's arrival. But in that moment, I felt like I had been erased all over again. Have you ever been told you didn't belong, only to prove later that you did more than anyone? Subscribe now. This is just the beginning. Long before this ceremony, before Marcus wore suits that cost more than my rent and spoke like success was his birthright, we were just kids, and I was the quiet one. My father married Marcus's mother when I was 9. She came with polished shoes and sharp smiles, and a son who already knew how to fill a room. Marcus was loud, charming, and effortlessly liked. I was soft-spoken, careful, the kind of child who stayed in corners and colored silently during family dinners. At first, Dad tried to bridge the gap. He'd take us both to the park, hold our hands like we were already siblings. But Marcus's mother had different plans. She wanted her son to shine, and for that, I had to fade. I still remember birthdays where Marcus got the big cake, the new bike, the loud songs, and I got something small with a postscript apology. "We'll do something special later, honey." Later never came. When Dad died, things got worse. He left no formal will, just a small trust, a few investments, and a house that both names had lived in. But Marcus's mother was fast. She had lawyers. She took control of everything before I could even catch my breath. I was told, gently but firmly, "It's best if you move into the city. Start your life. There's nothing left for you here." So I packed what I could, a few books, some clothes, my mother's sewing kit, a letter from Dad written 3 weeks before his last heart attack. "I'm proud of who you're becoming. Never let them shrink you." I folded that letter 100 times over the years, so much that the edges began to blur. while Marcus inherited the house and reputation. I took the bus every morning to school, then to work, and then to wherever I could find silence. I never asked for help. I never asked to be acknowledged, because I thought that if I just lived right, if I just stayed kind, maybe one day the world would remember me. Maybe one day someone would say she mattered. That's why I came to the ceremony, not for a photo, not for applause, just to sit in my father's row. But apparently, even that was too much. The hall slowly filled with more people, politicians, diplomats, celebrities with their entourage and photo-ready laughter. I sat quietly in row 6, my hands folded in my lap, pretending to look at the program, but my eyes kept drifting to the front, to that seat with my father's name still on it, still empty. Marcus was laughing with some industrialist's daughter now. His voice carried. So did the sound of his new Rolex tapping the champagne glass. Someone had already handed him before the ceremony even began. No one noticed me, except for when they did in passing. In glances, a woman seated beside me looked me over subtly, eyes moving from my simple dress to my modest shoes. She offered a smile that never quite reached her eyes and turned away. Behind me, someone whispered, "Isn't that Marcus Trent's stepsister? Didn't her dad cut her out of the estate? It's awkward for her to even show up." Could hear it all, and I didn't flinch. Not anymore. But inside, something was unraveling. I thought about leaving. Just getting up, walking out, catching a cab home, and spending the rest of the evening with my mother's old music box and a cup of lukewarm tea. But something kept me rooted to the seat. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was that folded letter from Dad still tucked into the side pocket of my purse. Maybe I just wanted to stay long enough to say I endured it. I adjusted the program in my lap and fixed my posture. The lights began to dim. A deep voice echoed. From the speakers, "Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. The president will arrive shortly." Chatter quieted. Camera crews focused on the main aisle. Security shifted into position. Everyone's heads turned toward the grand entrance. Everyone, except mine. I was still staring at the front row, at that empty chair, at the nameplate. The one with my father's name still. Untouched. Still waiting. Ever watched your place be taken by someone who didn't earn it? Subscribe. The next chapter flips everything upside down. A hush fell over the hall. 2 military guards stepped in first, tall, stone-faced, each flanking the aisle. In ceremonial posture, then came the voice again, this time steadier. Louder, "Please rise for the arrival of the President of the Republic." Everyone stood. Chairs scraped backward in unison like dominoes. I rose too, slowly, unsure where to place my eyes. From the grand entrance at the far end, flanked by guards and flashing lights, the president walked in, composed, deliberate, focused. He was dressed not in ostentatious robes or medals, but in a simple navy suit. His presence carried something greater than rank, something quiet, firm, and unshakable. Applause broke out. Not roaring, but respectful. The president nodded as he walked down the red-carpeted aisle, shaking a few hands. Pausing briefly to acknowledge the diplomatic row. People leaned forward. Phones tilted upward. Everyone eager for a photo, a nod, a moment, as he approached the first few rows. I could see Marcus visibly preparing himself, smoothing his jacket, fixing his hair, nudging the older gentleman next to him, and then the president stopped, not at the front row, not at the VIP seats, not even at the political section. He paused right in the center aisle, beside row 6. I didn't look up immediately. I thought maybe someone important was behind me. Then I felt it. A presence. It's a silence that pressed down only around me. I lifted my head, and the president was looking directly at me. People turned, cameras refocused. I heard someone whisper, "Who is she?" Another, "Why is he stopping?" He stepped closer, just a few feet away now. He didn't ask for my name. He didn't fumble through the program. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "I was hoping you'd come." My mouth parted, but no sound came. He offered his hand. "Please, walk with me." I took it every row I passed, turned their heads every I followed Dot and Marcus. His face had lost all its smug color. His mouth hung open slightly, eyes darting between me and the president like someone watching a dream. It's turned into a nightmare. But I wasn't dreaming. I was walking toward the front, not because I demanded it, but because someone powerful saw what others chose to ignore. And now, everyone else saw it too. They laughed when she sat in the back. Now watch who pulls her to the front. Subscribe if you believe silent worth always gets revealed. The president didn't say much as we walked. He didn't need to. The room was already buzzing. Cameras turned, whispers grew louder, and the entire tempo of the event shifted. For a moment, it wasn't about policy or politics or legacy. It was about me, the girl no one noticed, being escorted by the most powerful man in the country. We reached the front row. I saw Marcus shift uncomfortably in his seat, trying to look unfazed. But his hand gripped the armrest too tightly. The president motioned to the chair next to his reserved one. It had no nameplate, no fancy title. "This is for those who don't need introductions," he said, loud enough for others to hear. I sat. The velvet felt the same. But this time, it wasn't stolen, it was offered. Then he took the stage. The hall stood again, plodding as he approached the podium. His speech began like most do. Never mistake humility for absence. And never forget the people you overlook might be the ones who hold everything together when it breaks. Applause burst again, but this time it grew, stronger, louder, fiercer. As I stepped back, the president leaned in and whispered, "That speech will outlive mine. If that speech moved you, you know what to do. Subscribe because quiet strength deserves to be heard everywhere." When I returned to my seat, something had changed. Not just in me, but in the room. People looked at me differently now. Not with confusion or pity, but with something closer to reverence. Their polite distance had melted into curiosity and respect. A woman in a navy hijab leaned over from the next row, whispering. That was the most honest thing I've ever heard at one of these. Another, a high-ranking diplomat I recognized from TV, stood as I passed and gently shook my hand. And then, as I sat down, the thing I never expected happened. Marcus stood up. He clapped Dot alone at first. Stiff, hollow, but trying. I turned my head just enough to see him, not to acknowledge him, but to witness him, for once. Didn't have the spotlight. And it was clear he didn't know what to do without it. Then someone behind him stood too, a young aide, followed by a retired general, followed by half the hall. Not for him, for me. Later, as I stepped outside, cameras flashed again. But this time they weren't asking about my dress or my relation to Marcus Trent. They asked, "What organization do you lead? How long were you in the North during the conflict? Why didn't anyone know your name until today?" I answered what I could, but I kept it short. Some things are done to be seen. Others are done to be right. Behind the cameras, Marcus stood near the fountain, staring at the ground. His mother beside him hissed. "How did this happen?" he muttered. She was invisible, and I made sure she stayed that way. She snapped. "Then how is she on stage? And we're not?" Marcus didn't answer, because deep down, Kay knew. He'd spent years stepping over someone who was never beneath him, only beyond his understanding. For every time they told you to sit down, and you rose anyway, subscribe. Because the world needs more stories like this. That night, the headlines exploded. Unknown humanitarian honored by president. We celebrate her silence. No more speech that shook the nation. Stepdaughter turned national heroine. Who is she? Meet the woman behind the crisis relief work you never heard about. Social media flooded with clips of the president reaching for my hand. Then of me standing at the podium. And finally, that quote they kept replaying. Never mistake silence for weakness. Every network wanted an interview. Every paper wanted a quote. And for the first time in my life, didn't feel like I had to prove anything. Marcus didn't post anything that day. No curated photos, no backhanded captions. Instead, someone, forwarded me a video clip from a gossip channel. He was stopped outside a gala that evening. A reporter asked him, "How does it feel to be related to someone the whole nation is now admiring?" He blinked, then replied bitterly, "She's not really family, not anymore." And for the first time, it didn't hurt, because he was right. We weren't family. Family doesn't silence you. Family doesn't erase you. Family doesn't tell you, "You can't sit here." That night in my hotel room, I found an envelope tucked under my door. It wasn't official, just plain stationery with my name in. Handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a short note. "You may not have had a family to lift you, but you lifted others anyway. That's what makes you irreplaceable." Office of the President tie sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. The note in my lap. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just breathe, like someone who had finally come up for air after being underwater far too long. This story touched something in you? Subscribe. You deserve a seat at the table too. 3 days after the ceremony, I returned home, not to a mansion or a press conference, but to my modest apartment. Books stacked on every shelf, a chipped mug on the windowsill, and my mother's sewing machine still humming softly from one. The corner where I'd left it, there were no reporters on my doorstep. No camera crews following me through the grocery store. And that was exactly how I wanted it. But something had changed. My inbox was flooded, not with sponsorship deals or endorsement requests, but with letters, hundreds of them from women. In shelters, from students who dropped out of school because they felt invisible. From nurses, teachers, janitors, and mothers who had never been thanked, never been seen. All of them said the same thing. "I felt like you were speaking for me." But it was the handwritten envelope that caught my attention. No return address, no stamp, just one word in looping script: Grace. I opened it. Inside was a letter, not typed, not dictated, written in ink that bled slightly on the edges, like someone had gripped the pen a little too tightly. I watched the speech. I watched you stand tall, and I realized how long I've spent shrinking others to feel taller. I was raised to chase approval. You were raised to create peace. I'm sorry, not just for the seat, but for every dinner where we talked around you, for every holiday you spent alone, for treating your quiet like it was a weakness, when it was the loudest strength in the room. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you know. I see you now. There was no signature, but I didn't need one. I folded the letter once, slowly, and placed it beside my father's, the one I had carried for years, the one that told me never to let them shrink me. And now, after all this time, I had written no letters, but received the one I never expected, the one that admitted what no apology ever had, that my silence had always been louder than their cruelty. Sometimes the letter comes late, but it still matters. Subscribe if you believe. Quiet dignity always echoes back. Weeks passed. The attention faded, as all things in the news cycle do. The world moved on to the next headline, the next hero, the next outrage. And I let it. I turned down interviews, ignored PR requests, declined magazine profiles. I wasn't interested in becoming a symbol. I was still just a girl in a small apartment, with quiet dreams and a sewing machine that stitched more healing than any press could offer. But I did one thing. I used the honorarium they gave me, the money that came with the national award, and bought a small house. It's just outside the city. It wasn't huge, but it had 4 rooms and a garden. And every room I'd filled with books, blankets, journals, art supplies, and soft lighting. Not for me, for women like me. Women who had been overlooked, shut down, told they didn't belong, whose families had erased them, whose names were never called. Until they were needed, I named it Grace House, a place for rest, for rebuilding, for remembering your own worth without needing a podium to prove it. One day, a girl arrived at the doorstep. No suitcase, just a backpack and a bruised voice. She looked around the living room and whispered, "This doesn't feel like a shelter." Smiled. "It's not. It's a beginning." She burst into tears. I held her until her breathing steadied. Marcus never came to visit, but I received one final email, no subject, no greeting, just a line. I hope Grace House becomes what I never had the strength to give you. I didn't reply. Some things don't need words anymore. Some things become their own answers. Today, I walk through the halls of Grace House. Barefoot, I sip tea in the garden as laughter rises from the kitchen, and I think back to that moment when my stepbrother said, "You can't sit here," and how the world turned, because someone saw me, because I'd seen others first, because the true gift isn't a seat at their table, it's building your own, one where no one has to ask if they belong. They just sit and are home.